Thank you guys for, again, listening to one of my topics for class. It is part of our persuasive speech. We have to choose a topic that is very controversial, and I chose the death penalty. So I'm going to get right to it. I am going to ask you to close your eyes and imagine a society where compassion, rehabilitation, and replaces vengeance and execution. Today I stand before you advocating for abolishing the death penalty. The practice exhibits a cycle of violence rather than promotes justice. As of 2022, more than 2/3 of countries around the world have vacated the death penalty in law or also in practice. State and federal government identify about 60 different crimes to which the death penalty can be applied. The justice system is flawed, which questions the integrity of our legal system. We should ask ourselves, how many innocent lives are we willing to sacrifice in the name of justice? Where it's a matter of public opinion, I believe that various factors go into why the death penalty can be applied, and that's the region of the world, demographic factors, education, political ideology, influences, and one individual's view on the death penalty can also factor into why countries either participate or decline to enact the death penalty. Which brings me to my first point, is the cost associated with the death penalty. Many argue that it's more cost effective than imprisonment, which supposed to eliminate the cost of housing, feeding, and caring for inmates for several years. However, according to the state of Maryland, Gale's opposing viewpoint online article states that capital punishment in 2008, taxpayers contributed over or around about $187 million from 1978 to 1999. That's only based on 5 executions, which averages about $37 million per execution. The cost of death row estimates $3 million per inmate, whereas a lifetime of incarceration only averages about $1.1 million per inmate. As of today, over 22 states within the United States enact the death penalty. Those states include, but are not limited to, New York, California, New Jersey, Maryland, Texas, Florida, and so on. Which brings me to my second point of the racial disparities. Research has shown that African American defendants are more of a disadvantage. There are examples that were published in the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology found that defendants accused of killing white victims were more than likely to be sentenced to death opposed to the killing black victims. Some of those contributing factors, of course, are race, socioeconomic status, geographic locations. All of these state the disparities, which are stated in the Criminal Law Journal, and it says that it's an inherent inequality within our legal system. There's a lack of compassion, principles, and there's also a lack of fairness and inequality under the law. Plus, it's inhumane. I read the article, Evidence Does Not Support the Use of the Death Penalty by Kenneth Eugene. It stated that an Alabama attorney general claimed that nitrogen administration was fast and humane. However, an eyewitness attempt to an execution stated that an inmate received the nitrogen injection and he suffered convulsions for over 20 minutes. And that's how long it took him to actually die. So despite the evidence, it shows that, some suffering was inflicted during these executions. The practice also can stain our conscience, and it shows that it undermines humanity. Which brings me to my third point, that the death penalty doesn't deter individuals from committing crime. I believe that we should take some of the funds that we're using to put back into the community as far as rehabilitating, programs for preventative measures, helping those socioeconomic areas where people are suffering from the disparities. Also, help address some of the mental illness factors that may play into why people commit these individual crimes against people. But lastly, the death penalty was put on hold in 1972, but it was reinstated in 1976. And as of today, somewhere around 1,600 people have been executed. And it also poses the risk of people being wrongly convicted. Evidence show in the article, well, first let me state that death is irreversible. Once a life is taken, there is no turning back. So the article that I read, evidence does not support the use of the death penalty, states that since 1973, nearly 200 people on death row have been exonerated based on appeals. Studies also show that usually around 4% of people convicted and sentenced to death were actually found to be innocent. So in conclusion, I believe that abolishing the death penalty is not only morally imperative, but it's also a practical necessity. It is time for us to join the growing movement with the other 2/3 of the countries that have abolished the death penalty, and let's move more towards embracing a justice system that is rooted in compassion, rehabilitation, and respect for human dignity. That will help to minimize some of the racial disparities, wrongful convictions, and also the costs that are associated with the death penalty. But more importantly, the death penalty contradicts the values of a civilized society. It devalues human life, and it only encourages a culture of violence. As Pope Francis so eloquently stated, we cannot claim to uphold human rights while sanctioning state-sanctioned killings. Let us strive to build a society where justice is truly blind and mercy triumphs over vengeance. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.